It is time for the top 3. We are here finally. I'm honestly probably the most excited to talk about my number 3 on this list over any other game here. I can't really call it a hidden gem anymore because it did thankfully end up winning Best Indie at the Game Awards, but I need you all to know and love Sea of Stars like I do. Sea of Stars is in short a love letter to the JRPGs of the SNES era of games, Chrono Trigger specifically. I haven't even played that game, which I know is a cardinal sin as a gamer. But honestly, Sea of Stars is what will make me actually make the time to play that game. It's also the one on my list that I have played through PlayStation Plus Premium, but didn't have to pay extra for it. But they're doing a physical release of the game in early 2024, and I absolutely will be buying that to show love to these devs. This game is about a world where people who are born on a solstice, winter or summer, are special. They are taken to Moon Cradle Village, where they will be trained to be solstice warriors, as they are blessed with the power of the sun or moon, depending on which solstice they are born on. Sea of Stars follows the journey of Valeri, who I definitely called Valerie the whole time I played this game, a lunar warrior, and Zale, a solar warrior, and their best friend Garl, who is just a normal kid. I won't dig into too many details of the full world and lore. Solstice warriors are rare in the present day because of a huge battle that took place in the past, where most solstice warriors lost their lives to save the world from evil. It probably sounds a little basic, and on the surface it very much is. But these types of plots just work for this game, and it actually goes some places that genuinely move me to the point of tears, and also had some fun twists and epic moments. The story on the surface is a little cookie cutter, but the more you put into it, the stronger it gets. Let's talk about the combat. I mentioned earlier that Super Mario RPG was a huge inspiration for the combat of a game later on that list. And that game is Sea of Stars. Between Mario and Chrono Trigger, so much of this game is classic mechanics executed to perfection. Timing your attacks and defending to do extra damage, as well as taking less damage, makes what could be simple turn-based combat into very engaging and thrilling combat every single time. My favorite part is how you need to defend yourself against big enemy attacks. Sometimes enemies will show that in say 3 turns, they're going to use a special attack against you, and they will have a set of symbols next to the countdown timer. Those symbols correspond to symbols that match your attacks of your party. Those enemies need to be hit by attacks that include all of the symbols next to the countdown before it hits 0. And if you pull it off, they don't do the attack at all. This ends up making defense fun because you need to do everything you can to stop these attacks. But also on offense, it helps you game plan your moves. You're never just spamming the same attack because it does the most damage. You need to mix things up and swap out party members to make sure you cover these attacks if you're going to win the tougher fights in this game. It's so good. You also, the more damage you do, build up like a combo meter that, depending on who is active in your party and different combinations of party members, can do different things that are like one big monstrous attack on one enemy, be a big AoE that damages all enemies on the field. It could heal your party, all sorts of stuff like that. Just every little aspect of this game, every button you press in combat, builds it all into my favorite turn-based combat of anything I've ever played in my entire life. The art style in this game is one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen. It's a perfect representation of what the SNES games felt like they looked like at the time, but the actually beautiful versions. There are so many intricate environments that also have a beautiful day and night version, including sunrises and sunsets too. There are so many different environments. From a mountainside village, to a mining town, cloud areas up in the heavens, to pirate towns, to spooky haunted woods, to clock towers with gears everywhere, to cyber robotic places. Every single environment is oozing with charm and feels so unique to the other areas. These environments and the combat are both made infinitely better by the music in this game. We have now hit the really good shit about this game. I'm not one to really listen to music from a game outside of playing it. I got my wife Tiff the Mass Effect music on vinyl, and we listened to that while we play board games. Outer Wilds, Hades, and Animal Crossing are the other music from games I will listen to while working. I have been listening to the soundtrack of Sea of Stars for the entire time I've been writing these scripts for these Game of the Year videos. It's just so perfect inside the game and out. In the game, it just adds to the great vibes of roaming around the world. The serene areas have bubbly, happy sounds. Battle music is intense and gets me hyped every time. Scary areas have very ominous and foreboding music. Everything is paired with the perfect music, all in the SNES style that both feels vintage and incredibly modern. If I had to pick like an all-time favorite music of any game, I'll probably still go with Animal Crossing because I've loved that since I was in grade school. So nostalgia plays a huge part in that. But right behind that, like 1A and 1B, 1B is Sea of Stars. I am obsessed with this soundtrack. And it's all on Spotify and Apple Music. There's like 8 hours of this music out there. It's so good. Download it, listen to it, put it on the background while you're doing something else. It's so good. I gave some basics of the story earlier, but to dig into those more here, the characters in this game are really what carry it forward for me. Every single character in your party has such a cool and unique story. If anything, maybe the least of which is the actual main characters in Valeri and Zale. I can't even talk about who all the others are besides Garl, because it's a surprise when they get added to the party. And sometimes even who they are at all is a spoiler. Garl we will come back to though later. He deserves his own time in the spotlight. Retro RPGs always have a ton of side systems and content to pursue, and Sea of Stars is no different. There are collectibles and chests to find everywhere. There's a fishing minigame. There's a town to rebuild and find plans for new buildings to add to your home base. There's a traveling storyteller that you can give them items and they'll tell you stories of different people or places in the world for tons of extra backstory and lore. There's a battle game to play in the taverns, so that's like a board game you can play against people. There's a live band you can find music sheets in the world and give to them to change what music is playing in the taverns. There is a hidden trivia quiz show that quizzes you on different characters and story beats and combat rules. There is just so much stuff here that all is somehow so good and rewarding to discover. Alright Garl, it's time. Garl is the perfect human. In a dark world with rising evil force and considering everything he went through in his childhood, he is the purest of souls, who wants nothing but to cook good food for his friends and is willing to protect those around him. Without spoiling how, Garl ends up being so integral to the story of this game, while also being the best character, and even is dominant in combat by being both bulky and tanky, but also healing the party. I wanted to give him his own little special shout out here because he truly is so incredible, but it's hard because I can't fully explain why he's so good. Like story-wise, I can't mention it, but just who he is as a character, it's just pure joy and innocence and like what friendship is. Like I could get like really fucking out there with this, but he's just so perfect, and I hope I've done a good enough job explaining why to make you want to try this game out. The last thing I'll say about Sea of Stars is, much like games of old, you have your ending when the credits roll. I absolutely think you need to keep playing beyond that point. There's so much more to the story that it impresses that both the first ending and the later true ending can both ultimately be fine places to stop. I am so happy I was in love with this game so much to keep going and play more to see what else it has to offer. It's truly mind-blowing what they have in store for you after the credits, and I urge everyone who plays this game to see it through. And worst case, look it up if you're not going to play it. Sea of Stars is honestly kind of in the same vein as Dead Space for me. It opened my eyes to an entire new genre of games that I love in theory, but I haven't really dabbled in old JRPGs. I want to go back and kind of take a history lesson of all the classics now, and that is 100% because of how much I loved Sea of Stars. It's honestly the game, while I'm writing all this stuff down, I want to screw all these videos. I just want to play Sea of Stars again. It's that game for me this year that I just want to keep playing, but I have forced myself not to for the sake of playing other games. So do what I can't and go play Sea of Stars right now.